Amigos, we'll be using this drone footage. This is from pexels.com. I'm going to include a link in the description in case you want to follow along. Okay, let's go back to the composition. We'll drag it to this button, this icon, and let's rename it to clip. And this is a pretty long clip. It's almost 17 seconds. So for the purposes of this tutorial, what I'm going to do is simply trim it. We'll start at 4 seconds. Let's go to 4 seconds, hit B for Bravo to set the in point of the work area. And let's go to 7 seconds. Hit the letter N for November to set the out point. Right click and go to trim comp to work area. Control K, Command K to go to the comp settings. And for the start time code, let's change it to 0. And what we'll do is let's track it in Mocha. Make sure that the clip is selected. Go to Effect, Boris FX Mocha, and go to Mocha AE. And in the Effect Controls window, let's launch Mocha. The golden rule when you're tracking in Mocha is to go through your footage and try to find the best frame to start tracking. Sometimes it could be in the beginning, the middle, or the end. Now for this shot, it seems like any frame will work. So for the purposes of this tutorial, let's simply start at 1 second. Now, remember that Mocha is a planar tracking software. That means that it looks for patterns in a plane. Now we want to track all this loop of highways all coming together. And we're going to trick Mocha into thinking that this is a plane. It looks pretty flat, so I think we can get away with it. Let's go to the X spline tool and let's draw the shape. And hit Control A, Command A to select all the points. And using this blue handle, let's round it. And let's readjust the points. Now for the track motion options, this will depend on your footage, but definitely you'll need translation, scale, rotation, skew, and depending on your shot, you might need perspective as well. If you don't get satisfactory results, then try it without perspective. Now for this one, we'll turn on perspective and let's begin by tracking backwards. So let's go ahead and hit the track backwards button. And let's go back to our starting point and let's track forward. Now let's check our track. What we can do is we can go to the surface tool and let's try to align this and let's align it to the same plane of this loop. And then we can go to the grid tool. And what we can do is we can hit play and let's check it out. If your plane is drifting too much, that means that your tracking is not working. You need to retrack. Now let's turn off the grid. And the next step, amigos, is we need to select a reference frame. Now this reference frame should be the widest angle possible. And in this case, it's right at the beginning at 0. And what we need to do is this surface tool, we need to match it to the size of our composition or our clip, our footage. And to do that, we'll go to the Align Surface tool, click on it, and there you go, we're done. Now let's rename this layer to Loop, and we'll disable tracking, we'll lock it, and let's hide it. Now let's do one more. What we want to do is we want to track this highway. Now there's a lot of cars that are going through and it can mess up our tracker. Remember that Mocha works by tracking patterns in a plane. What we can do instead is track this patch of grass because it's on the same plane of our road, our highway. So let's go ahead and find the best frame to start tracking. In this case, let's go to the very beginning. Let's zoom in. Let's go to the X spline tool. Let's draw a shape. We'll hide the surface tool for now. And we'll also track perspective. And let's go ahead, make sure that all these are selected, and let's track forward. Let's go back, let's check it out. Let's go to our surface tool. Let's align this to the surface so we can check it out. Let's go to the grid tool. And let's hit play. Okay, there's a little drift, but it should be okay. Let's turn off the grid, and now we need to select our reference frame. And again, this should be the widest angle possible. It'll be at the very beginning, and we need to make this surface tool the size of our clip. Let's go to the Align Surface tool, click on it. There you go. And let's label this Highway. And let's disable tracking. Let's lock it. And now let's exit Mocha, go to exit, and let's hit save. We're back in After Effects. Now, before we do anything else, I like to add a marker where our reference frame is located. And let's add a marker. For this tutorial, it's pretty easy. We know it's at the very beginning, but in some cases, it could be in the middle of your clip. For example, it could be at 124. Now, what we can do is we can label this ref so we know that it's our reference frame. Let's make a copy of this clip, Control D, Command D, and this will be our reference. And what we need to do is freeze this image right here at 0 seconds. So let's right click, go to time, and let's go to freeze time. It's frozen. Now let's pre-compose. And what we'll do is we'll call this lines, and let's move all attributes. Perfect. Now let's jump into this comp, double click. And what we'll do is let's draw our lines, and we'll be using shape layers to draw our lines. Now make sure that all the layers are deselected. Click outside, and let's go to the pen tool. Let's make this bigger. And let's draw a line for this bridge, this highway bridge right here. So let's click. We'll click and drag, click and drag. Let's add one more point. And what we can do is we can adjust these handles. Perfect. Now let's go down, let's select it, make sure that the fill is set to none. And for the stroke, what we can do is give it a color, and let's make it 50 pixels for the width. Now let's taper the lines. What we'll do is, let me zoom out so you can see this. Let's drill down to contents, drill down to shape 1, and let's go to the stroke, drill down. And we have this option, taper. Now this option comes with After Effects CC 2020 and above. We're using 2022, so we're all good. If you're using a lower version of After Effects, a CS6 or CS5 or CC 2018, you won't have this option, so it won't work. What you need to do, amigos, unfortunately, you will need to upgrade. Okay, let's drill down, and what we can do is for the start length, we can make it, let's make it 40%, and we'll do the same thing for the end length, 40%. So this is what we have. So you can see that we just taper the lines, pretty easy. And now let's add a trim path. Let's go to shape 1, go to add, and let's go to trim path. And we'll place this after the stroke. And what we'll do is we'll work with the end and the start. So let's make the end 0. Make sure that your CTI is at the very beginning. And what we'll do is actually hit Control K, Command K. For the start time code, let's change it to 0. There you go. And let's go to the end property for the trim path. Click on the stopwatch to add a keyframe. Let's go forward to frame 15. We'll make this 100. And then now for the start, let's add a keyframe. And let's move forward to 1 second, and we'll make this 100. So let's select the keyframes, hit F9, and let's check it out. Let's see what we have. All right, it's looking pretty good. There's one thing that we need to fix, and let's go frame by frame. You see when we start, we have a taper, and the stroke is pretty thick. So let's animate the width of the stroke. Go to stroke 1, go to the width, and click on the stopwatch. We'll make it 0 at the very beginning. And what we'll do is hit U to reveal all the keyframes. We want to see the keyframes for the start and the end. And at 15, we'll increase this to 50, and then we'll go back to 0. And then let's add Easy Ease F9. So let's check it out. Nice. you can see that it's a lot nicer. And we can trim this layer. We can trim this right here. And what we'll do is we'll color code it. Now from here, amigos, you can add more by simply making copies. We can make a copy, Control D, Command D. Let's move it over. Let's move it at 15. And what we'll do is we'll change the color. And then this one will also change the color. We'll sample this color. And let's go to the contents. Let's go to Shape 1, Path. And with a path selected, we can go to the selection tool. And now let's draw, for example, let's do this one, this highway. And what we'll do is we'll move these points. That's all you need to do, just move the points. Okay, let's check it out. Let's zoom out so we can see this. Perfect. Now, there's one thing for this one. And this one should go underneath the bridge. So what we'll do is we'll create a mask. So make sure that this shape layer is selected. Let's go to the pen tool. Now, right now we are in the option where it creates the shape. What we need to do is click on this one, which will create a mask. So let's click on this icon. And now what we can do is we can draw, let's draw this area. And I know this yellow color doesn't really help. Hit M for mask. What I'll do is I'll change the color so we can see this. And now let's go back and we want to mask out this area. And let's do one more. Okay, now what we need to do is, let's zoom out so you can see. They're all in add, so let's subtract it. Hit subtract for mask 2, subtract, and mask 3. Let's change the color so you can see it as well. And this one, let's make it orange, and we'll hit subtract. There you go. Perfect. And you can continue with this process, the same technique, just make a copy. What I'll do is let's hide the reference layer. So all we have is this. And remember that this is on a transparent background. And now let's go to our clip. And what we need to do is we need to apply the tracking data from Mocha. So let's go to clip and let's go to tracking data, go to create track data. And we'll select loop, hit OK, and then we'll go and select corner pin. You can also select corner pin with motion blur. For this one, we'll make it easy, corner pin, and the layer will go to lines and then hit apply export. And if we go to lines, you can see that it added the corner pin. Now let's go ahead and let's check this out. Perfect. And the cool thing is we can go back to our lines and we can just move these over and it should still work. It doesn't matter where it is. Now, if you want to give it a glow, what I do is I have Deep Glow, which is an awesome plugin. It's a paid plugin, but it gives you really nice glow right off the bat. Now, if you don't have Deep Glow, what you can do is, this is what I suggest, but it'll take a hit with your render time. What you need to do is you need to bump it up from 8 bits to 32 bits. And then you can go ahead and let's apply, go to stylize, let's go down to glow. And here we can increase the radius. So that is your option. Just increase it to 32 bits. Okay, now what we'll do is for this tutorial, we'll take out the glow to make it go faster. Let's go back to 8-bit. And let's do one more. Let's do the one right here for the highway. So we'll make a copy of this lines, Control D, Command D. We'll just call it lines 2. Let's double click to jump in. Let's unhide our reference and we'll delete these 2 layers. And let's go to the rectangle tool. Make sure all your layers are deselected because we want to create a shape layer rectangle. And what I'll do is we'll create a rectangle and we'll make sure that the stroke is set to none. And for the fill, we'll make it green. And then let's drill down to rectangle path 1. And for the size, let's make it 150 by 25. Let me zoom out and let me bring this higher. Now let's add a repeater. Go to repeater. And for copies, let's say 60 copies. Let's go to the transform properties for the repeater, drill down. And for the position, this is the X and the Y. For the X, let's make it 0. However, for the Y, we'll bump it up. So this is what we have. So we'll bump it up to -40. And what we'll do is we'll animate the copies. So let's bring our CTI to the beginning. Let's add a keyframe. Let's go to 15. Let's add a keyframe. Go back to the first one. We'll make this 0. So this is what we have. We can add easy ease. It's a little too fast. Let's slow it down. Let's move this keyframe. All right, that seems better. So this is something that you definitely should experiment with, the timing of your animation. Now what we'll do is right around here, right around 20, we'll go to the offset. We'll add a keyframe, click on the stopwatch, and let's go to 2 seconds. And what we'll do is we'll move the offset so we can animate it off. We'll make this 60. Let's check it out. Okay, this looks okay. Definitely experiment more. And what we'll do is now let's activate the 3D switch. And before we do, amigos, let's move the anchor point down to the bottom. Hit Y for the pan behind tool, and let's move it down right here. Now let's activate the 3D switch. And all we're gonna do is we're going to rotate it, hit R for rotation. And let's move this down. Let's rotate it in the correct perspective. And then now let's go back to your contents rectangle, go down to the repeater. And what we'll do is we'll adjust, go to the transform repeater. And instead of -40, let's make it -70. So it's more spaced apart. And this is something that you know, definitely you'll have to experiment with. And let's go back to the rotation. You can see that it's slightly off. And let's rotate it this right in place. All right, let's check it out. Just kind of put it in the right place. Perfect. Okay. I know it's a little hard to see. What we can do is maybe we can give it a different color. Let's make it, let's see, yellow. Yellow's kind of hard too. Let's make it, let's see, orange. We can also play around with this shape again. Instead of 25, we can make it 40, so it's a little thicker. And instead of 150, we can make it 125. Let's make it 125. So definitely play around with this. Now we need to mask it out. What we can do is, again, go to the pen tool. We'll go to this icon where it creates a mask. And we want to mask out this area. And let's hit subtract, go to M for mask, subtract. And we'll want to subtract this area as well. Actually, once it gets here, we want it to disappear. So what we'll do is, let's go ahead and just do this. So once it gets beyond this point, it just goes away. So let's check this out. Perfect. So this is looking pretty good. And we can tweak it more, but let's just leave it like this. Now let's hide the reference layer. Remember that this is on a transparent background. Now let's go back to our drone footage. Let's go to lines 2, go to clip. Now go back to Mocha, go to create track data. And now we need to select the highway layer. So let's go to highway, hit OK. And we'll go to corner pin, and then this time lines 2, apply the export, which will apply the corner pin effect. And there you go, amigos. And what we can do for lines 2, we can, you know, let's say we want it to start at 1 second. Let's just shift it over. And there you go. That is how you can create these cool lines on your drone footage. Let's do one more. What we'll do is, let's make a copy of this lines, and we'll call this pin, and double click. And what we'll do is we'll delete this layer and make sure that all your layers are deselected. Go to the pen tool, and then down here, let's create a line, and then click, and then click, and we'll take out the fill, go to the stroke, and we'll make it black, and we'll make it about 30. And then what we'll do is we'll drill down to the stroke, and for the line cap, we'll make it round, and let's add a trim path. Let's add a trim path, and then we'll animate the end property. Let's go to 1 second. Let's animate it. We'll just add easy ease. Actually, let's make this linear. There you go. And then go back to the rectangle tool. Again, make sure that all your layers are deselected. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and draw a rectangle like this, and make sure that the stroke is set to none. And we'll give it a fill color, green. And then for the pan behind tool, Y for the pan behind tool, let's move it. Let's move the anchor point. We can snap it and hit S for scale, and let's unlink it. And for the X, let's make it 0. And when this comes right here, right at frame 11, what we'll do is trim it, add a keyframe, and then right around 105, let's make this 100. F9, and let's check it out. Perfect. Add text. Let's say Los Angeles, and we'll make it black. And then we'll click on this little icon, the transparency, preserve underline transparency. So when this animates on this shape layer, the green one, our text will also animate on. Perfect. Now let's go back to our clip, and what we'll do is let's hide Mocha, and we'll right click, we'll go to track and stabilize, track camera, and this will track it in 3D. Okay, once it's tracked, let's go to the point size. We'll make it bigger so we can see this. And then for the target, we can increase the target size as well. And let's try to create a target parallel to our floor. And it's a little hard. You can click on the points, click again to deselect. Anyways, what we'll do, this is close enough, we can adjust it. What we need to do is now right click, and we'll go to create null and camera. And we have a 3D camera, we have a null object. Now let's go down and find our pin, and let's bring it in. And for the null, hit P for position. And what we'll do is we'll copy the position properties. We'll go to the pin, we'll activate the 3D switch. And actually, before we do that, let's go back. We want to move the anchor point down to the bottom, hit Y, and let's move the anchor point right here so it'll be easier for us. Now let's activate the 3D switch, and let's go to the position properties, and let's paste it. And you can see that it's right there. Hit S for scale. We'll scale it up, and we can readjust. If we need to rotate it, we can rotate it if you want, just a little bit, depends. Let's rotate it just for the fun of it. And now let's check it out. Let's see it. Hopefully this gives you several ideas of what you can do for your very own drone footage. You're not only limited to these lines. Be creative, amigos. And remember that life is truly a gift. Make it count.